first thought that came to mind, just kind of thinking back over the last few years, this game reminded me of a game in 2019 that we played against Minnesota at home, where it felt like we controlled the game early. Defense was playing really well, and the offense was to a degree doing what it wanted. And we were able to build up a cushion. And then in that Minnesota game in 2019, Minnesota slowly threw their way back into the game with Rashad Bateman and Chris Ottman-Bell and all the weapons that they had. Yeah. The difference in the two games, though, was that the great thing about that Minnesota game was that they opened up the game Iowa did with 3 straight red zone touchdowns. And that was Nico Raggini, Tyler Goodson, and Amir Smith-Marset from Nate Stanley. And in this game, they settled for field goals. But it felt a lot like that type of game where it was just such a gradual.
This game should have been over at halftime.
Absolutely. Should have been over
at halftime. Don,
should have been over.
I know they didn't throw the ball in the second quarter.
Yeah.
Iowa dominated the first half.
Yeah, they did.
With the exception being red zone. That's it.
Yeah.
That Iowa State defense, that Iowa State offense had nothing.
Nothing. 100 yards in the first half. And that was, I think, 100. It was like 108 yards, but it included a 15-yard Iowa penalty and maybe another 10-yard Iowa penalty. So it was like 80-something total yards for the offense, minus our own mistakes.
Well, here's the truth. When they went in at halftime, I'm sure, here's how they felt. I'm sure they were relieved that they were only down 13.
Yes.
Because it could have easily been 17. And 17, as we've already talked about, is 3 scores, not 2.
And think about as well, too, Iowa State was 1 field goal at halftime away from only being down 10 despite getting dominated the whole half. So they could have even been closer. But anyways, Cade was awful. I mean, he was bad. He was not good. And this is relative to Power 4 standards, I guess, not Iowa standards. But, you read the stats earlier, Corey, 13 of 19, 45% completion, 99 total yards, 0 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, 3 yards an attempt. I thought he decided pre-snap in the second half where the ball was going. And, Coach, I would love to hear your thoughts on that. I thought there were 4 or 5 times that he had his mind made up before the play where the ball was going, and there were other guys that were better options, but it was predetermined where the ball was going. But I love to look back through game logs. Less than 100 yards passing and at least 1 turnover has happened 4 times from Iowa's quarterbacks in the last 9 games. Okay. And that doesn't include the Wisconsin game last year in which Iowa didn't even throw for 40 yards, but that game doesn't qualify in that metric because we didn't turn the ball over. The last time, for comparison, I know it's apples to oranges, but the last time that Iowa State had that happen, and the only time it's happened to them in the last decade, was a game that you remember. It was 2016 in a 42-3 loss against Iowa over 100 games ago. So, I mean, for anybody else, 100 yards, under 100 yards and a turnover or multiple turnovers is just a apocalyptic performance, and it's somehow for us become somewhat routine.
Here's another stat that comes to mind from today in the Big Ten, and let's face it, the Big 12 is a comparable conference in so many ways. Mm-hmm. If you outrush your opponent by over 100 yards, odds of you winning are very high, and yet it didn't happen today.
Yeah, that was the first thing I thought about when looking through the stat sheet. That was one of your metrics talked about in the preseason we outrushed them by a lot. And usually for us, I don't know this for a fact, but I would love to go back if we could at some point and just look through game logs and say how many rushing yards did we have today?
They hit over 200, didn't they? 204
yards. I would love to know Iowa's record over the last 5 or 10 years with more than 200 yards rushing. I bet it's a 95% win rate.
They're going to lose
204 versus 89.
Wow. Yeah.
Just so people are aware, I just want to give everybody a quick score update because people keep commenting about it in the chat. Nebraska leads Colorado 28-0 in the second quarter.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah, I mean that's gonna. Honestly, at this point, we should be rooting for that. At this point, we should be rooting for Nebraska to run up a whole bunch of wins and be a top 10 team by the time they play Iowa, because there's not a lot of quality win opportunities left on the schedule, even at this early
That's
stage.
one way to look at it.
There's not five ranked wins on this schedule, remaining. So we should hope that Nebraska runs up a bunch of wins.
Yeah, it's entirely possible.
I'm saying it's not an SEC gauntlet schedule where you have a bunch of opportunities to win big games. Like if they lose to Ohio State, they're going to finish the season. Even if they were 10-2, if Nebraska didn't get ranked, they'd probably finish the season with no ranked wins.
Well, right now, Kyle, if you look at our schedule, who has the best chance when we play them to be a top 10 team or a top 20 team even? Well, Ohio State's one, but you're hard pressed to think of another.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
You're going to be. It might be Nebraska.
Yeah, Nebraska.
We said that all along that they're a team by the end of the year that might be pretty formidable.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not surprised, like you said, Corey, that we didn't see Brendan Sullivan. What I will say is we better see him next week against Troy.
Don't get your hopes up, big boy.
Keep saying
Don't
that,
get
but
your hopes up.
Again, it's like I keep looking at this and I'm like, if we don't see Brendan Sullivan next week, Kirk either hasn't learned from the last, 2.5 years, or it was a tight game. I don't know. I know I keep banging my head into a wall, but like we got to keep saying it. Like the fact that he won't
see Brendan Sullivan next week. And by the way, if you don't see him next week, you're probably not going to see him at any point. And if you do, shame on Iowa for not playing him earlier in the year. Yes. Troy is, I don't know what Troy did today, but Troy
was down. In the first half, they were down 21-7 at Memphis. So my guess is they lost again. I don't know that, but
38-17 loss
to me. D. Rollison.
38-17?
38-17 loss to Memphis.
Yeah, well, that's Memphis. It's a good Memphis program. D. Rollison, thank you for the super chat. After last week, many fans were flying high with playoff aspirations. The second half burst my bubble, and yes, it doesn't count for the Big Ten. Love the show. Thank you, D. Rollison. Appreciate you being here. And also Midwest Storm Chasing. Corey, you may not agree, but we were out-coached. Everybody loves Kirk, but time management equals game loss. Run, pass, punt. That's game management. First of all, I'm not going to disagree with you. I think this is on the head coach today. I think ultimately you can talk about quarterback performance. You can talk about the offense and Tim Lester, and the offense wasn't good enough in the second half. But I look at ultimately game management, the 2-point conversion. That's game management. That's coaching. And although what Coach said earlier about the field goal and the wind, you're still throwing into that wind, Don.
Right.
So I still, I don't know. I mean, is that the equivalent of 70 yards with the wind? I don't know how much it affects it, but I still would maybe, if only Max White could have gotten like 4 or 5 more yards, it would have become more plausible.
Yeah, you're right. I think it would have been 67 yards.
Yeah.
And that's not even Drew. Not even Drew can do that.
Yeah. I have 2 minor notes on the play calling that I'd like to get thoughts on. One was obviously the 2-point conversion. I just thought it was counterintuitive to everything else that they did in the second half. I mean, the entire second half, the play calling was, we're trying not to lose this game, to me at least. And you've already failed to pass the ball 3 times on the goal line in the first half. And that call it made no sense to me. It didn't fit within the flow of the play calling. It didn't fit within what Iowa was doing well. No part of that made any sense to me.
Yeah.
Well, I can tell you it's point chasing. That's all there is to it. Don, you remember a game, was it 2017 or 18? I believe it was 17. You and I bring up this game. The game where Iowa, same thing happened, I believe. They went for, what happened? I'm sorry, different thing happened, but it was a 2-point conversion decision gaffe. Iowa went for 2 too early, right? So they were down 9. They were down 9 in the fourth quarter, late in the fourth quarter, and they go for 2. Why are we going for 2? Down 9. Get it within 8 and stay alive. Why are we killing ourselves? Let them kill us. I mean, I think we need to just, whoever's making decisions on on the percentages for going for two needs to be reevaluated and maybe checked in the clinic next door, because those are horrid decisions. Those are common knowledge, are they not, in the coaching world, Don, that you don't go for two down 9?
You're saying you're down 9?
They were down 9 against Purdue in 17, went for 2, failed, and the game's over. The game's over. Because you failed at 2.
Yeah, I'd say you kick it and you go for 2 after you score the touchdown.
Yes. Yeah. Unless you're just so confident in your offense, we're going to go for 2 twice and win. But we all know that's going to happen.
You kick the PAT, puts the pressure back on Purdue. Because now you're down by 8. Now you can put it in overtime.
And Jacob in the chat.
Think of it this way: it's a one-score game. Kick the extra point. It's a one-score game.
Exactly. You don't end the game. You're ending the game early. You're saying, "Well, there's the game." No, you put the pressure back on them. Jacob Stolen, thank you for the super chat. Why are we? Am I misreading this? Jacob Stolen.
Why are we committing recruiting violations on QBs that can't throw the ball 50 yards?
I thought it was some pun with the last name. Why are we committing recruiting violations on QBs that can't throw the ball 50 yards? Thank you for the super chat, Jacob. Yeah, I understand the frustration. Chris, the greatest moments of the Kirk era and the lowest are based on the risk-averse strategy. Cade was bad, but we only threw 3 times on first down in the second half.
I counted 2. This was my next thing I was going to get into. After the pass to start the second half, where he throws across his body across the field straight into an Iowa State defender. I counted 12, and maybe I'm wrong. I counted 12 first downs the rest of the game. Or well, I guess he's including the Hail Mary. I didn't include the Hail Mary, I guess, when I did this. So 13 first downs, of which they threw 10 times, or they ran 10 times. But after that first down interception, they ran the ball on first down 7 straight times.
Don, I'm trying to overcome some deep-seated acid right now in my chest. You tell me, was the play calling predictable in the second half? And if so, is that on Tim Lester or is that on Kirk? I'd have to think it's on Tim.
It's on Tim. If it was, we were protecting the lead. They were struggling with their offense. I think we thought we could, compared to the first half, go a little more conservative and shorten the game. I think that's probably what they were thinking.
But, I mean, it didn't seem like – it seemed like Tim called a pretty good first quarter. I mean, obviously the results would say he called a pretty good first quarter.
I think we had him on balance.
And yet it's almost like once they got ahead, normally Iowa's really difficult to play against when Iowa's ahead, because even though they don't run the ball great, they do run the ball. They're committed to the run game, and their defense is so stout.
Right.
And
our net punting is going to be good too.
And the difference today was you've got an Iowa State team that we've been talking about it all week, had the ability to make big plays in the passing game. And that's what it came down to ultimately. They made enough big plays in the passing game, that's what I was afraid of, and I've been cautioning people all week. I felt good about this game, but the asterisk was Iowa State can throw the ball like bananas.
Here's one similarity to last week's Iowa State game. Last week, those 2 receivers had 13 catches for 210 yards. Today, they had 13 catches for 201. So in the end, they got their yards.
Yeah.
And then one play was 75, of course. But the bottom line, you're hard-pressed to contain those guys. You heard me say going in, if we can be even on explosives, I think we'll win the game. I don't know how explosives came out. I think we only had 21 yards.
No, we had multiple.
I'm sorry, the runs. Yeah, two runs, right? 2 or 3 runs.
I thought it was 3 runs.
In the passing game, we only had 1. That was my mistake.
Yep.
So you think he had 3 explosives?
Yes.
So I know. We probably did beat him on explosives then if we had 4.
Yeah. The difference was theirs went for a touchdown. Ours did not.
Yeah.
That was the difference. The only last thing I'll say before I let you guys go is the thing that slightly concerns me even more than just the offense, because I think I'm kind of numb to the horrid offense at this point. The we did eclipse 300 total yards today, and that was a figure that we won 9 games last year, recording under 300 yards total. I thought the defense did not have a good second half, regardless of Iowa State playing better. I don't think they gave up 200. They gave up 250 yards,
and they gave up 20 points.
20 points and 250 yards. That's a bad half, no matter how you
20
slice
points
it.
is too many and at home against anybody. And then they'll say that. Even if it's Ohio State, they'd say that's too many points and a half.
Well, it wasn't as if Iowa State had a bunch of short fields either. They didn't.
No, they didn't.
They didn't have any short fields. They had none.
No short fields. And no freshness excuse either, by the way. Like sometimes, like with Ohio State, last year it was either the short fields, or in other games it was they're just on the field for a million plays,
we had more snaps, as I recall, than they did.
Yeah, and time of possession was literally 30 minutes to 30 minutes in the game, and we were, I think it was maybe 16-14 at halftime or something, 16 minutes to 14 minutes. So it wasn't like they were on the field for a ton of time. It wasn't like they, were on the field for a ton of snaps. So that was a little bit troubling. The last thing I'm going to say, okay, and this is going to sound a little bit harsh, but Xavier Wampa was on the broadcast multiple times trash talking Iowa State, either in a dog pile or on the Iowa State sideline. I don't know if you caught that, Corey. There was multiple times he was jawing with Iowa State wide receivers, or there was one time on the sideline on the broadcast with a coach that he was kind of getting a little when a receiver was pushed out of the sideline. He didn't record a tackle. He didn't record a pass defended, and he got burned on the play that partially cost Iowa the game.
And he got benched.
Not a good look in a rivalry game for a 5-star recruit. And if he's hurt, he's hurt. If it was an effort problem, then that's even more disturbing. Or if it was a preparation problem, I don't like an energy problem. But that was as bad of a performance as an Iowa DB, as far as a look, as far as optics, has had in a long time. Because even when they don't play great, they don't stand out like that. They don't stand out as somebody that's talking a lot and giving up a big play like that.
Let me throw another play. We ran through a laundry list of, and then I'll let you go, Kyle. But we ran through a laundry list of plays earlier today that if you flip them and they turn out differently, Iowa probably wins. Just like any one of those plays. Let's throw another one in the mix. It's third down inside the red zone. Iowa State throws up jump ball, TJ Hall and Jalen Knoll. And I know you probably couldn't see this from your seat, Don, but it's going to make you sick when you see it back later on CBS. Yeah. But TJ Hall had the interception, and Jalen Knoll just said,
He ripped it out of his hands.
That's my ball. And credit to Jalen Knoll. And I felt bad for TJ. Great kid. I know you got a special connection with TJ and his dad. And I know TJ was sick to his stomach 2 years ago when he gave up a couple of big plays against Nebraska. But that's going to be one that haunts him, because that's another one. And that's not just on him, but I'm just saying there's another play that even if he just knocks that thing down incomplete, and I understand going for the pick, you're trying to take away even a field goal. You're going for the pick. I get it. But he got taken on that play.
Yeah, absolutely. That was tough to watch. And that was, that's not even a bad play on TJ's part. Like you said, you just feel bad for him a little bit.
You just got to fight. You got to do better.
That was a classic rivalry play where one guy was stronger on the play. And
TJ Hall is going to look back at that and say, I got to be better.
Yeah.
I got to be stronger. I got to be better.
Right.
Absolutely. So I'll step back, but that's the only thing that concerned me a little bit moving forward from this game, because we've seen the offense be so bad, is if we can't win games even with 300 yards of offense, there's a few more games that will be.
Well, let's not forget, 300 is not that many.
No,
there are all kinds of teams that average 400.
Yeah, no, I know. I'm just saying there's 10 games last year that we would have taken 300 in a heartbeat. That's all I'm saying.
I don't think there are many teams that are going to help stretch Iowa vertically like Iowa State. That's why I keep saying the schedule, and if they can continue to improve this pass offense, I think the defense will be fine. Yeah. And I think that I still think they're going to win 9 or 10 games. I do. I had them preseason at 10-2. I had them losing to Nebraska. I had them losing to Ohio State, and maybe they end up at 9-3. But I still think they win 9 or 10 games, and we're still talking about their playoff chances in late November because of the schedule suit. And I think the defense is going to be fine. I think Phil Parker will get that figured out. It's just sad that it cost him a game, and they were, one missed kick, just to miss a 52-yard or 54-yard field goal. Game's over. Doesn't matter. We're just sitting here talking about ways they need to clean things up. Instead, we're talking about a loss and a 1-1 record and a loss at home to a rival. So
right, let's not forget. I don't worry about us going in the tank. That won't happen. Simply because we have too much character on the team, too much character on the part of the coaches. The coaches are going to set the right example for the players. The players are going to respond. I don't worry for a second that we might decide that we don't want to be a good football team. That's not going to happen.
And we saw that just two short years ago.
Ohio State's game 5. Yeah. It is entirely possible after 5 games that we're 3-2. We all agree on that. That's entirely possible. That's to be expected. But what happens next? It's entirely possible. Also, we'll have a 7-game winning streak at the end of the year. I realize that's difficult because any of those 7 teams can beat us. We know that. But Iowa football generally takes care of business. And if it's a game that we have a chance to win, we'll usually find a way to win it.
And I don't think it'll be any different this year. That's part of the reason why this loss is so painful.
Yes.
Not just because it's to Iowa State, but you win this game and you're like, they still got a great shot at 11-1. A legitimate shot if you sneak by in this game of getting to 11-1. And let's not forget, part of the reason why I kept saying, hey, they're going to get this passing game figured out, but it's probably going to be October. You had Illinois State, Troy, a down Minnesota team, and a bye week. Right. The one real difficult challenge, not that Minnesota on the road isn't challenging, but the one real difficult challenge is this game against Iowa State. Could you survive without a passing game? And they could not do that today.
Yeah.
Brian, thank you for the super chat. It's not that we lost, it's how. I would have liked to see I formation, bodies on bodies, and Jazz because of his running style. Don't get cute. Thanks. Well, thank you, Brian, for the super chat. Don, what's going on with Jazz Patterson?
I don't know. You're right. He had any number of snaps last year. I think I remember about Jazz. Correct me if I'm wrong. You might not say he's the shiftiest runner we had, but one thing you could always say is he's going downhill like a rocket.
He is.
He's generating as much power as he can for his frame, and he's going to make his moves. If there's a move that's made, it's on the run. He's not going to be sidestepping anyone. He's going to be heading downhill. And there's a good argument for that kind of player, too.
We're going to go back to our Iowa Smokehouse line in just a second. But first, RTI Threads player of the game, Kaleb Johnson, 25 carries, $187, 2 touchdowns. Don, I've been saying for the last week that I thought Kamari Moulton is the better all-around back. At this point, I have to go back on those words as of right now, based on what we've seen from Kaleb Johnson through two games. And I'm fine admitting that it appears I was wrong. I do think there's still a chance that we see a different guy, ebb and flow, maybe a couple games where this guy's hot, a couple of games where this guy's hot. What I was impressed with Kaleb, first of all, great blocking in that first half, huge gaps for him to run through, huge holes. And that's what's so frustrating is he can't convert when you get down into the red zone. But what I was impressed with in the fourth quarter, Don, we saw him playing through contact, yards after contact, turning those legs, getting the extra yardage that I have been saying for the last 2 years. Here's a guy who's big and impressive when you look at him, but he doesn't seem to like contact. And no, he's not a zig and zag type of guy. He's not a jitterbug, but play through contact. I know it's hard to get low. He got low in that fourth quarter, kept turning those legs, looked like a physically impressive back. It wasn't enough, but talk about the play of Kaleb Johnson today.
Well, I agree with him. He seemed to be a more physical runner than what you remembered from games in the past. The thing that was frustrating about Kaleb in the past, he might put up 150 yards one week and put up 40 the next. And it didn't seem as if he was as determined a runner as we saw even in the second half today. So that's an encouraging sign. He does have home run potential, of course. We've seen that any number of times. And as long as he shows up with that determined presence when he is in traffic, then you got yourself a really good back there. And also, let's not forget he caught the ball. I believe he had 3 catches today. So maybe he's improved his receiving also.
Yeah. Well, this was a Kaleb Johnson day. I don't know that it'll be this way every game, but and again, I think that there's got to be a little bit of context here. He was running through big holes in this first half, correct?
Yes, he was. There was no number.
And that's why I'm saying, like, the numbers are impressive, but the O-line deserves a lot of the credit for that. But he did get 25 carries, which is far and away the most. Kamari ended up with 7 carries. LeSean does not seem – I don't know what's going on with him, if he's not healthy or what the deal is. Let's go to our next Iowa Smokehouse caller. We've got Kyle. Kyle, welcome to the show, big boy. How you doing?
It's a good afternoon, but it is not one.
Well, it's also 8 o'clock.
Good evening. Yeah.
Bad
First
evening.
of all,
Bad
just
evening, Kyle.
What's that?
Bad evening.
Yeah, bad evening. Bad evening indeed.
Bad evening to you too.
Yeah. And then the other thing too, another reason that I think we may have lost today, I noticed that we tend to do better. And this was true too with Deacon and with Petrus. Like, it's been true last few years that we seem to do a bit better when we're up tempo. We're playing up tempo. Cade just goes back and he takes too long to do his reads. And then before you know it, he's either sacked or he throws at the wrong spot or misses obvious targets, like what happened with Gil today a few times. And then you have the offense is just too predictable, you know, like, and that goes back to why we need to have motion, because that's one way we can effectively try to fool other defenses. Clearly our offense is not up to the task of being threatening right now. So I don't know. I can't help but feel a little bit disappointed. And I know Rome wasn't built in a day and all that fun stuff, but it's just, I mean, they need to bench Cade already, like, because he won a championship or a Big Ten championship at Michigan. We're not Michigan. You know, we don't have as many weapons around him. Like, we just don't.
Don, what was going right in that first half with the first quarter, specifically with the passing game? Because it was like night and day. Not that they were, Reese Vanderzee didn't have a catch until the second half, but Jacob Gill was involved early. They got Hayden Large involved in a nice 10-yard catch in that first half. They were moving the chains. In fact, the first drive of the game, they moved the chains 3 different times and played the field position game and played it beautifully, got the ball back. That north end zone was rocking. It was clearly affecting the cadence for Iowa State. And
that's a good point. We need to give our fans credit. I know people sitting around me said, in their opinion, they never heard it as loud in Kinnick as what they heard today in that north end zone.
But so what was happening? What besides the field goal thing or field position? Excuse me. What was going right for the passing game in the first quarter, and what changed as the game went on? Was it just adjustments Iowa State was making on the back end?
That's a good question, Corey. I'm not sure. It seemed like we were getting people open in the first half more so than the second half. You've always heard me say one of the quarterback's problems is that the receivers aren't doing a great job of working their way open. Credit to the coverage, of course, but some of the blame has to go to the receivers too.
Well, yeah. Hold on though. There were it's hard to ignore. I know that, but it's also hard to ignore when you see receivers wide open on tape several times and they're just not getting the ball, whether that's protection or quarterbacking or whatever. I am very hesitant to blame receivers because there were at least multiple times today where there were wide open receivers that were just missed. So
and that goes back to Cade not being able to make his reads fast enough, not having vision down the field. I mean, it's all related, right? And then they realize, we can't, in the second half, we're not being successful at passing the ball. And then we have no choice but to run it. And then we become too predictable. So it's just this chain effect. And I don't know, like, Cade just needs to be benched. It's not acceptable. We paid all this money for him. And look what he's doing. We even tampered and got our coach suspended for a game. Like, it's ridiculous.
That's on Kirk.
Well, this whole thing's on Kirk. It's his team. He's the CEO of the team.
I don't believe in just benching him. I believe in giving Brendan some time in the next game and give them Don, if you're going to audition, okay, we did it 3 weeks late. Do it next week. There's no other time to do it but next week. Audition these guys. Give one guy a drive and then give another guy a drive, or give one guy a quarter and another, whatever. I don't care what it looks like at this point. Just give the other guy a shot.
Yeah, there's no other games later in the season where we can do that. They have to do it next game against Troy. There's no other chance.
Yeah.
I mean, I tend to agree with you. Not that they couldn't have a lopsided victory against Northwestern or Minnesota, but on paper, this next week is the time. As Corey, the other Corey, a different Corey, not the one in the queue, not me. Corey 9621 says it's Sullivan time. I think it was Sullivan time last week. I thought we should have seen Sullivan last week, but that's not how Kirk operates. I fooled myself, Don. I'll admit that. I fooled myself into thinking he was going to play two guys game one, and I was downright wrong.
I was surprised too. I thought we would.
Well, we're both not very smart as it relates to predicting that type of thing because we should have known better. We should have known better. Listen, Erica, this is.
As you said, Corey, Kirk did say, I feel really good about Sullivan, and he talked about having a package for him even to start the season.
That was in July.
And right. talk is cheap. He said that, but has he done it? No, he hasn't. Like, I'm sorry, I don't mean to be negative or whatever, but this is true. This is truth. And I don't know. I'm just not happy with Kirk. I think if he doesn't turn things around drastically, discussions need to be had.
Well, Erica, we appreciate your viewpoint as always, and let's hope this is one of very few post-game shows like this all season.